The heart monitor's steady beep echoed through Central Metropolitan Hospital's ICU as I checked Mr. Chen's vitals for the third time that hour. Everything looked stable, but something felt off. After 15 years as a cardiac nurse, I'd learned to trust my instincts. "Blood pressure's dropping again," I murmured, making a note in the chart. "And that ST elevation. Problem, Nurse Roberts?" Dr. Walker's voice dripped with condescension as he strode into the room, white coat fluttering like a cape. The Chief of Cardiology barely glanced at the monitors before shaking his head. "Everything's within normal parameters. Just follow the standard protocol." I bit my tongue, holding back the words that wanted to escape. He hadn't noticed the subtle changes in the EKG pattern, the warning signs I'd been tracking for the past 2 hours. But then again, why would he? I was just a nurse. At least that's all they knew about me at Central Metropolitan. None of them knew about my other life, the research I conducted at night in my small home office, or the papers I published under my full name, Dr. Sarah Roberts, Ph.D. They didn't know about the experimental cardiac procedure I'd developed, currently under review by the FDA. A procedure that might be exactly what James Chen needed right now. "Yes, Dr. Walker," I said quietly, watching him sweep out of the room. Once he was gone, I pulled out my phone and sent a quick text to Dr. Maria Torres at Johns Hopkins. "Need your eyes on something. Possible candidate for the Roberts protocol." James Chen wasn't just any patient. The 45-year-old tech billionaire had been admitted 3 days ago with chest pains, and every specialist in the hospital was watching his case closely. His company, Chen Innovations, was on the verge of releasing revolutionary quantum computing technology. The stock market was holding its breath, waiting to see if he'd recover. I'd been assigned as his primary nurse, a decision that had raised eyebrows among the hospital administration. "Are you sure we want to put a regular nurse in charge of such a high-profile case?" I'd overheard Dr. Patterson, the hospital director, ask during rounds. What they didn't know was that I'd requested the assignment specifically. I'd been following Chen's case from the moment he was admitted, recognizing symptoms that matched my research exactly. His condition was deteriorating in a pattern I'd documented in my latest paper. A pattern that traditional treatments might not address in time. My phone buzzed with Maria's reply, "Sending you the latest trial results. Your instincts are usually right. Keep me posted." I glanced at Mr. Chen, who was sleeping fitfully. His wife Jenny sat beside him, dark circles under her eyes betraying her exhaustion. She looked up as I checked the 4 lines. "How is he really doing?" she asked softly. "I know they keep saying he's stable, but..." I hesitated, choosing my words carefully. "There are some patterns I'm watching closely. Would you like me to explain what I'm seeing?" She nodded eagerly, and I spent the next few minutes walking her through the subtle changes in his condition, explaining in clear, simple terms what each indicator meant. Unlike many of the doctors, I didn't try to minimize her concerns or talk down to her. "You understand all this so well," she said, looking at me with new interest. "How long have you been studying cardiac care?" "A long time," I replied, keeping my voice neutral. "I've developed a particular interest in unusual presentation patterns like your husband's case." Before she could ask more questions, the monitors suddenly erupted in a chorus of alarms. Chen's blood pressure was plummeting, his heart rhythm becoming erratic. Code blue. I hit the emergency button, already moving to start chest compressions. The room filled with medical personnel as the code team responded. Dr. Walker burst in, barking orders. "Get me the crash cart. Start the standard protocol." "Wait," I said, still doing compressions. "Look at the pattern. This isn't a standard cardiac event. The ST changes suggest..." "Nurse Roberts," Walker cut me off sharply, "step aside and let the real doctors handle this." I stood my ground, continuing compressions. "His condition matches an atypical presentation I've been researching. There's an experimental protocol." "Enough." Walker's face was red with anger. "Security, get her out of here. She's interfering with patient care." As a security guard moved toward me, Jenny Chen's voice rang out. "Wait. Let her speak." "What protocol?" Walker scoffed. "Mrs. Chen, with all due respect, this is just a nurse trying to overstep her. It's called the Roberts protocol," I said clearly, still focused on keeping Chen's heart beating. "Currently in final phase trials at Johns Hopkins. It's designed specifically for cases like this, where traditional interventions may be counterproductive. The Roberts Protocol? One of the younger doctors looked up sharply. I just read about that in the New England Journal of Medicine. But that was developed by Dr. Sarah Roberts, a cardiac researcher. Yes, I said, meeting Walker's stunned gaze. That would be me. Dr. Sarah Roberts, PhD. And if we don't implement the protocol in the next 10 minutes, Mr. Chen's chances of survival drop by 60%. The room fell silent except for the wailing monitors and the sound of my continued compressions. Walker's face went through a rapid series of emotions: disbelief, anger, confusion, and finally, a grudging realization. Prove it, he said tersely. I nodded to Jenny. Mrs. Chen, my phone. Could you pull up my ID from Johns Hopkins and my latest research paper? She grabbed my phone, quickly finding the documents. Her eyes widened as she read. It's true. She's actually Dr. Roberts, the one who developed the procedure. Walker looked like he'd swallowed something sour, but Chen's deteriorating condition left no room for ego. Fine. What do you need? For the next hour, I directed a team of doctors and nurses through the protocol I'd spent years developing. It was surreal watching them follow my instructions, seeing the respect gradually replace skepticism in their eyes as Chen's condition began to stabilize. By dawn, Chen was stable, his vital signs improving steadily. Jenny had fallen asleep in her chair, holding her husband's hand. I stood at the nurse's station, updating his chart when Walker approached. How long? He asked, his voice tight. How long have you been working as just a nurse, while holding a PhD and conducting groundbreaking research? I finished my notation before answering. 5 years at this hospital. 15 years total in nursing. The PhD is from Johns Hopkins, completed while working night shifts. The research is ongoing, funded by private grants. But why? He gestured around the hospital floor. Why work as a nurse when you could be? Because this is where I see what really happens. I cut him off. Not in a lab, not in clinical trials, but here on the floor, watching how conditions present in real patients. Every theory I've developed, every breakthrough in my research, came from observations I made while working as a nurse. He opened his mouth, then closed it again. Finally, he managed, the hospital board is meeting in an hour. They'll want to talk to you. I nodded, knowing this was just the beginning. The quiet life I'd built, balancing bedside nursing with academic research, was about to change dramatically. But as I looked at Chen's improving vital signs, I knew it had been worth it. Sometimes the best way to change the system isn't to fight it from the outside, but to work quietly within it, gathering knowledge and waiting for the right moment to reveal your true expertise. And sometimes when that moment comes, it saves more than just one life. It changes the way people think about expertise itself. The hospital boardroom felt smaller than I remembered. Perhaps it was the crowd. Every department head, administrator, and senior physician had somehow found reason to attend this emergency meeting. They sat around the massive oak table, stealing glances at me as I waited quietly in my nursing scrubs. Dr. Patterson, the hospital director, cleared his throat. Dr. Roberts, or should I say Nurse Roberts, this is an unprecedented situation. Sarah will do fine, I said calmly, placing my research portfolio on the table. And yes, I imagine having a nurse save your highest-profile patient using her own experimental protocol is rather unprecedented. A few people shifted uncomfortably. Dr. Walker sat rigidly in his chair, his face an interesting shade of purple. Your credentials are impressive, Patterson continued, flipping through my file. PhD from Johns Hopkins, multiple published papers, principal investigator on 3 major cardiac research studies. What we're struggling to understand is why you chose to work here as a nurse while conducting this research. I looked around the room at all these brilliant minds who'd never thought to look beyond titles and hierarchies. Do you know how many hours I spent at patients' bedsides developing the Roberts protocol? How many subtle symptoms I noticed because I was there, doing the simple work of patient care? The room was silent now, really listening. Every breakthrough in my research came from direct patient observation. Things you don't see in lab results or 15-minute rounds. That's why I chose to remain in nursing while conducting research. It's not about hiding expertise, it's about gathering it from the ground up. Jenny Chen chose that moment to enter the room, followed by the hospital's legal counsel. I hope I'm not interrupting, she said, though her tone suggested she didn't particularly care if she was. But I thought you should know that my husband is awake and recovering remarkably well. She placed a document on the table. We've also decided to make a donation to Central Metropolitan. $50 million specifically earmarked for establishing a new research division. One that integrates clinical practice with research at all levels of patient care. Patterson's eyes widened. Mrs. Chen were incredibly grateful. The donation, Jenny continued firmly, comes with one condition. Dr. Sarah Roberts will head the new division, with full autonomy to implement her integrated care model. The silence that followed was deafening. I could almost hear the mental calculations happening around the table. $50 million versus traditional hospital hierarchies. That's a very generous offer, I said carefully. But I have some conditions of my own. Now everyone was staring at me. Who was this nurse/doctor/researcher who dared put conditions on a $50 million donation? First, the new division will include positions for nurse researchers. Not just nurses assisting research, but nurses conducting their own studies supported by the hospital. Patterson nodded slowly. That's innovative. Second, we implement a new training program that breaks down the artificial barriers between different medical roles. Doctors will spend time doing direct patient care. Nurses will have opportunities to contribute to research and treatment planning. That's completely unorthodox, Walker protested, finding his voice. You can't expect attending physicians to understand all aspects of patient care? I finished for him. Actually, I can. And I will. Because that's how we advance medicine, by learning from every perspective, not just the ones with prestigious titles. Jenny Chen smiled. I like these conditions. Add them to the donation requirements. The next few hours were a blur of discussions, negotiations, and planning. By evening, I had an office on the research floor, a team beginning to form, and a mountain of paperwork to process. But as I made my evening rounds, yes, I insisted on keeping some clinical duties. I knew the real work was just beginning. Word spread quickly through the hospital. Nurses who'd worked alongside me for years came by to express their surprise, their support, and sometimes their own hidden aspirations. I've been working on a research proposal about patient recovery patterns, Lisa, a veteran ICU nurse, confided. But I never thought. Submit it to me by Friday, I told her. The new division needs good research, regardless of where it comes from. James Chen recovered fully and returned to his company, but he didn't forget what happened. 6 months later, he established a national foundation promoting medical research by frontline healthcare workers. The first grant recipients included 3 nurses from our hospital, each with innovative research proposals grown from years of patient observation. Dr. Walker struggled with the changes at first, but eventually something shifted. Maybe it was seeing the results of our integrated approach, or maybe it was his own experience working alongside nurses in the new program. One day he stopped by my office. I was wrong, he said simply. Not just about you, but about the whole way we've structured medical care and research. It's a hard system to change, I acknowledged. We've all been trained to think in hierarchies. The Roberts Protocol isn't just about cardiac care, is it? He asked. It's about changing how we see expertise itself. I smiled. He was finally getting it. The changes at Central Metropolitan became a model for other hospitals. Our integrated research program produced breakthrough after breakthrough, each one proving that medical innovation can come from any level of patient care. The artificial barriers between nurses, doctors, and researchers began to dissolve, replaced by a more collaborative approach. 1 year after that fateful night with James Chen, I stood in the hospital auditorium, addressing a new class of medical residents and nursing students. Look around this room, I told them. Every person here, regardless of their title or role, has the potential to advance medical science. Your insights matter. Your observations matter. And most importantly, your willingness to look beyond traditional hierarchies matters. In the back of the room, I saw Jenny Chen nodding. She joined our hospital board and become a fierce advocate for integrated medical care. Beside her sat James Chen, fully recovered and deeply invested in our program's success. The changes weren't always easy. Some old-guard physicians resigned rather than adapt to the new model. Some administrators struggled with the flatter organizational structure. But the results spoke for themselves: better patient outcomes, more innovative research, and a more satisfied medical staff. Lisa, the ICU nurse who'd nervously shared her research proposal, now heads her own research team. Her work on patient recovery patterns has been published in major medical journals, and she still works regular nursing shifts to stay connected to direct patient care. Dr. Walker, to everyone's surprise, became one of our strongest advocates. His experience learning from nurses and other staff transformed his approach to medicine. He now teaches a course on integrated medical care, using his own journey from skeptic to believer as a teaching tool. As for me, I maintain my dual role: researcher and nurse, leader and caregiver. My office stayed on the patient floor rather than in the administrative wing, and I continued to take regular shifts providing direct patient care. "Don't you miss just being a researcher?" a young resident asked me recently. "It must be exhausting maintaining both roles." I thought about the night we saved James Chen, about how years of bedside nursing had informed my research in ways no laboratory could match. "I'm not maintaining two roles," I told her. "I'm living proof that these artificial divisions we've created in medicine don't serve our patients or our profession. Every time I work a nursing shift, I'm researching. Every time I develop a new protocol, I'm drawing on my nursing experience." Last week, I received a letter from a small community hospital in rural Minnesota. They're implementing their own version of our integrated care model. The letter was signed by both their chief of medicine and their head nurse, a small detail that made me smile. The Roberts protocol is now standard care for certain cardiac conditions, but its greater legacy is the change it sparked in medical culture. In hospitals across the country, nurses are conducting research, doctors are learning from bedside caregivers, and patients are benefiting from a more collaborative approach to medicine. Sometimes I think back to that night when everything changed, when a crisis forced everyone to look past titles and see expertise for what it really was. Just a nurse who saved a billionaire's life became a symbol of something larger. The recognition that knowledge and innovation can come from anywhere, if we're just willing to look past our preconceptions. As I write this from my office, watching doctors and nurses collaborate on a new research protocol, I'm reminded of something I told the hospital board that first morning. True expertise isn't about titles or hierarchies. It's about the wisdom to learn from every perspective, the courage to challenge old systems, and the understanding that the best insights often come from the people closest to the work. The heart monitor's steady beep still echoes through our ICU, but now it's accompanied by something new: the sound of all voices being heard, all expertise being valued, and all of us working together to advance the science of healing. Sometimes the best revenge isn't about proving others wrong. It's about proving that there's a better way forward, one that benefits everyone. And sometimes, the quietest person in the room, the one everyone underestimated, turns out to be the one who changes everything.